Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hold My Microphone. I'm sorry if it's a little windy in here. I have a fan on me because it is currently 97 degrees in my apartment today. So that's where we are in life, I guess, today. This is episode 3 of my podcast where I was going to talk about why I love the movie Man of Steel. You either love this movie or you hate it. If you want to know how much I love this movie, before I saw this movie, I thought Superman was okay. And now after seeing this movie, I think that Superman is tied as my favorite superhero with Spider-Man. I love this movie to death. And I'm going to talk about this movie for a long time today. Because I'm going to talk about everything that I like in it, why I think that people that don't like it are wrong, and just we're going to talk about this movie. That's what we're going to do today. So first I'm going to talk about things that people say that make the movie bad, and then I'm going to give my argument on why I think that that is wrong. First, one that really gets me is, I think, like, Red Letter Media said this, and this really bothered me because I love Red Letter Media, and I always usually agree with their reviews, but this one I just don't at all. I don't really agree with any of their DCEU reviews, honestly. The Wonder Woman one I agree with, for the most part. The Shazam one I agree with. I guess just the ones with Henry Cavill I just kind of disagree with because I love his portrayal of Superman. I love it so much. I have tons of Henry Cavill shit for Superman. I love his portrayal of it. But something that I'm going to argue against right now is people say that the Henry Cavill Superman does not save people. This is completely wrong. Just in Man of Steel alone, Superman saves a ton of people. He saves an entire oil crew from their oil crew burning, like the oil rig, it's on fire and it's exploding, and Superman, breaks down the door and he has fire all over him, but it isn't hurting him, and he saves all of those people and he gets them to safety, and then he leaves himself behind and lifts the massive tower to make sure that the helicopter lifts off into safety. This is before he even becomes Superman. He saves Lois Lane multiple times. He saves her when she's in the Kryptonian ship. He saves her multiple times in the city. Saves her all the time. He saves army soldiers. I remember there was like an army soldier flying out of a helicopter, and he flies and he grabs him and says, "Hey, are you okay?" So, he saves a lot of people in this movie. He saves a bus full of kids when he's a teenager. Tons of stuff. He saves a lot of people. I think he saves like 7 people in this movie. There's like 7 scenes of him saving people. So, yeah. He saves people. I don't understand where this mentality of Superman not saving people came from. But I'm just going to argue against it. I think that if you don't think that Henry Cavill saves people in this movie, I think you're wrong. And I just gave you 7 times where he saves people. So, watch the movie again if you don't think he saves people. Another thing that I want to say is this Superman is extremely violent. I think that Superman, I think that the fights are just more realistic. Have you watched the original Superman movies? They are ass. I'm sorry. I know that some people love Christopher Reeve, but he's a fucking nerd. he's a nerd. The movies are boring, and he's so invulnerable in those movies. They're so boring. The time travel really bothers me. There's no consequence with time traveling. Lois Lane dies in the first movie, and all he has to do is fly around the Earth a couple times, and then everything's okay. That kind of shit bothers me. That ruins all the tension. If anything goes wrong, he can just fly around the Earth a bunch of times and turn back time. That is ridiculous, and it's stupid, and it's just boring. It is boring. I remember there was like a scene in Superman 4 where Superman was fighting some guy, and there was a castle wall, and the castle wall broke down, and he randomly fired blue vision out of his eyes, and it rebuilt the entire structure. What the fuck? He just comes up with new powers on the fly. Now, I understand that Superman was rebuilt in 86 and these movies were in the 70s and early 80s, but still, people want to argue that the Christopher Reeve movies are better. I completely disagree. They look like home movies. The effects are so bad, and they're comical. Nothing happens. He never fights Lex Luthor at all in any of the movies. In the first Superman movie, there isn't a single fight scene. In the second movie, there's some fight scenes, but they're just terrible. You can totally see the green screen. The effects are absolutely awful. And the bad guys even, like, laugh at him like it's a fucking comedy show. Like, I remember Ursa throws a sewer. Is that what you call? I don't know. My brain's dead right now. She throws one at him, like a sewer lid, and he flies into a car, and she laughs at him, and there's like comical music playing. It's so stupid. I can't watch them. Superman is such a fucking dork too. Like when he interviews Lois Lane, like he's like smiling and like looking down like he's shy and shit. Like I don't want to be that kind of Superman. When I am a superhero, I don't want to be a fucking pussy. You know? So I don't know. That also gets me. I guess that's two of the big, huge things that people like to criticize about this movie. Now I'm going to say everything I like and also address some more of the criticisms then. First of all, I want to say what I love about this movie is I love Lois Lane. This Lois Lane is much, much more adventurous and just kind of more likable. She has more personality. Amy Adams is a great portrayal of her. She like goes off on her own to look at the Kryptonian ship, and she helps out with the army and literally brings the Phantom Drives together to what does she do? No. She like defends the army soldiers or something. I don't remember, but she does so much more than the first Lois Lane, who just kind of like has a feisty personality, but she doesn't do anything. She just kind of stands there and watches as it happens. This Lois Lane, even in like Batman v Superman, she comes to the rescue to, help, go to Clark when Batman is fighting him. And, I don't know, she kind of throws away the Kryptonian spear and she tries to get it back, and she kind of fucks up in that part. But, like, she's a very investigative journalist, and she goes, like, I remember in Batman v Superman, she was trying to investigate everything with the Lex Luthor's henchman plot. But in Man of Steel, she investigates all, like, Superman's backstory, and she's so feisty in a new way. Like, you actually get to see it happen. And like she, everyone tells her to stay away from this whole Superman story, and Superman's like, why are you after me and everything, but she's so into it, and you actually get to see it happen. She doesn't just stand by and watch it happen. She comes and she puts herself right in the middle. And I love that line in where the investigators are and the army people, and they're like kind of flirting with her, but she's like, are you gonna fucking keep on measuring your dicks, or are we gonna actually do shit? I love it. I love Lois Lane in these movies. Another thing I love is the costume for Superman. I love this costume so much. Next to the New 52 costume, this one is probably the best Superman costume I've ever seen. It's definitely my favorite on-screen superhero costume by far. I love the color tones. I love the S. I love the cape, how there's no logo in the back. I think it's all just a perfect costume. I love like the gold lines on his hips and everything. That's really cool. I hate the old Superman costume. The underwear, the fucking it. Like, have you ever The old Christopher Reeve movies, they look like your aunt sewed them for you. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't look very super to me. Now, I understand that it's for the age and everything, and I understand that in the comic books, also his mom made him the costume. But there's just a point where it just looks bad. And I love how in the Man of Steel movie, his costume is from Krypton. It wasn't made by his mom. It's his heritage's costume. It's the costume of his house, of his family. So I really like that. I just love the design of it. It makes him look much more intimidating and realistic. And I love that it comes from his heritage. And it's in the Kryptonian ship that his father left for him. Well, no, I don't think his father left it for him. I think it was just there. But it had the House of El in there. Because Kara Zor-El had the ship, which is another member of the House of El family. So that's why the suit is in there. It was a House of El spaceship, scout ship that went to go to Earth. The next thing I want to say that I love about this movie is Zod. Zod is... he doesn't have nearly as much depth as he does in the new movies compared to the old movies. In the old movies, he just wants to conquer it. That's what he wants to do. He's like, I am Zod. He's very one-dimensional. He's like Steppenwolf in Justice League. Just very one-dimensional. Zod in Man of Steel is amazing. Michael Shannon does a terrific job. And to be honest, Zod in this movie is my favorite bad guy in a superhero movie. He is genetically made with the sole purpose of protecting Krypton. His genetic code in the Codex was literally designed specifically to just defend Krypton. And that's why he caused the mutiny in Krypton, because he believed that the Council was fucking it up so hard. And he, after the Krypton explodes and they get released from the Phantom Zone of the Phantom Drive, he comes to Earth and he says to Cal, you need to be with your heritage. You have to. Like, this is our life. This is where we come from. He's basically saying, like, this stupid planet with all these stupid people, it could be something greater. It could be a second chance for us. It's what your father wanted you to do. It is what your destiny is. And it's so much better than just wanting to conquer Earth because. Like, I hate it. I hate the way that old movies, and I love the Man of Steel way. And I also love the final fight when Superman destroys the world engines and it's just him and Superman. He holds the ashes of what could have been his second chance, and he says, you have taken my soul. You have destroyed all of my people. Like, he has nothing. The sole purpose for which he was born, genetically born in the Codex, is now gone. He has nothing. He has nothing to go to. He has nobody to comfort him. It is him and him alone. That is it. He has nothing. And to witness a fight like that between Superman, who decides to go with his own people, compared to going with Zod, that whole fight is so emotional because Zod has nothing left. He has nothing to hold back. Literally, his sole purpose is gone, and he is so mad at Cal because he took his sole purpose. And Cal is like, I know I did this, but I did it for my people. Krypton had its chance. That's a line in the movie. And he says, I am going to side with the people that raised me. That's a big character move with Superman because, Zod said, if you destroy this ship, you destroy Krypton. And Superman stops for a second, but then he says, Krypton had its chance. So I love Zod in this movie, and I love the fight between him and Superman. That's the next thing I'm going to talk about is the fight scenes. The fight scenes in this movie are amazing. They are so realistic. For some reason, Red Letter Media was saying it gave him a headache or something. I don't know, man. I just disagree. These fights are very action-packed and very realistic. I can't watch the old movies because they're so unrealistic and they're just boring and comical. But, these fights, you can just feel the impact of all the punches and this fight in Smallville between Ursa and I can't remember the other big guy's name. Between Superman and those three in the military, it's this awesome fight where everyone comes together and there's tons of explosions and crashing into buildings and emotion. Like Ursa is taunting Kal and Kal like screams and bashes her into all sorts of stuff, and it's super great. And especially the fight between Zod and Superman at the end. The music by Hans Zimmer and that is amazing. And the flying through the buildings, and there's this great shot where Zod grabs Superman by the cape and he's flinging them all around, and you can see it like Zod's angry eyes as he throws Kal into all these buildings, and he just keeps on going and going because Zod threw him so hard. And the fights are so realistic and they carry a lot of emotion to them, and they just make you feel like it's really happening, like it really is Superman. Like it doesn't just feel like it's a home movie or like something that's fake. It just looks fake. The old ones, they look absolutely fake. But this Man of Steel movie, it just makes you feel like it's all real, and it's all like if Superman really came, this is what the fights would be like. So I love the fight scenes in this movie. Definitely, probably the second best part of the movie. I'm going to bring up the best part of the movie at the end of the discussion. Another thing that I love about this movie is Superman deciding for himself. So Superman is the Krypton's first natural birth in centuries, and because he is naturally born, he is not genetically coded for a purpose. The Codex, which is another thing that I love about this movie, the Codex is created to birth Kryptonians with the Codex, and they are coded for a purpose. A warrior, a scientist, a leader, a worker, anything like that. Like, you can't decide for yourself. That is your genetic code. That is your purpose, decided by the Codex. But Superman wasn't born by the Codex. He was born naturally. Therefore, he has total freedom with what he wants to do. And Jor-El says, you don't have to do anything. You are Krypton's, example of freedom. And he said to Superman when he has to go and save Lois, he says, you can save her. You can bring hope to people. It's up to you. Zod was telling Superman that, Jor-El wanted you to bring Krypton back, but Jor-El said, no, I wanted you to be a symbol of hope. I wanted you to give people an ideal to strive towards. I wanted you to prove that Krypton can have a second chance through freedom. I think that's what he says anyway. He says you can save her. You are the ideal of hope. So I love that. I love Superman deciding for himself, and I love the whole Codex thing because it makes Superman even more unique. Because in the old movies, everyone was the same Kryptonian kind of person, but Superman is even more unique because he is the only one that can decide for himself. I love that. The technology and creatures is another thing I want to talk about on Krypton. In the old movies, Krypton is a planet full of crystals, and that's it. It's like a crystal planet, and the people are there with crystals. That's it. There's no alien life. There's crystal technology, but it's really weird. Like it's just crystals. There's no like buttons or anything, and like a crystal spaceship and stuff. It's just kind of weird. Like you don't really know how it works. But in Krypton on Man of Steel, there's alien life. I know like Jor-El has like a pet flying creature or something. And there's like all sorts of wildlife, and the technology is really cool. They have like these big computers that are like those things that you could like press your hand into. Like I don't remember what they're called, but you know what I'm talking about. Like the metal things you could like press your hand into, and then it would show your big handprint, out. Do you know what I mean? It's like the thing that utility belt Buzz shoves regular Bus in Toy Story 2, that kind of thing. I love the technology and the creatures in this. I think it's really cool, and yeah, it's just really fun to see, and the ships that bring Zod and like people to the Phantom Zone look like dicks, but they're still really cool. Like they form, like the spaceships like form into their bodies, so that's really cool. I just like all that stuff. I think it's really cool. I love how Krypton actually has like life. You know what I mean? And it's not just like a crystal museum, but it's like a living planet. I like that. And Jor-El. I love Jor-El in this movie. I think that Marlon Brando's interpretation of Jor-El is really good. I do. But I like this Jor-El a little bit more because he has like an even more fatherly voice, I feel like. Maybe. I will say that the Jor-El in this movie is a lot more like be Superman than the other one, because the other one's like I remember Marlon Brando's like, you cannot interact with human life. It's like, Jesus Christ. But no, this Jor-El is more like be Superman, and I like how more of the history is explained in Krypton with the new Jor-El, and I do like his whole consciousness thing as uploaded into different computers. Like he helps out Lois Lane on the bad guy ship, and I really like that. I thought that was really cool. Now, the scout ship is something I really wanted to talk about that I liked in this movie. So basically, like in the original Superman, if I remember correctly, Clark found a green crystal. He went to the Arctic, and then he threw it in the water, and then it created a big, huge crystal fortress. I don't know how that crystal got there. Sorry, I don't know how that crystal got there. I still don't know. If you know, email me. But this Fortress of Solitude is really cool because it's a scout ship that was left by Kara Zor-El when the Kryptonians were still exploring different planets. So Kryptonians have been to Earth before, if that makes sense. And Kara Zor-El left that scout ship there in Earth like 20,000 years ago, I think it was, and then it froze in the North Pole. And so that's how Jor-El knew where Earth was. There's a line where he says, "Yes, Earth. We've been there before. We left an old scout ship there," or something like that. And so Superman finds it, and that's his Fortress of Solitude. I think that's what he's looking for in his whole life as a secret superhero thing. I think that's what he's looking for. Or he's just like trying to get a job or something. But I think he's always trying to look for that scout ship, in my interpretation anyway. When he's like having different jobs and being like a secret superhero, I think he's looking for that scout ship. The scout ship has all sorts of like cool technology in it, and it has Jor-El's consciousness, and it has the Kryptonian birth center where all of the planned Kryptonian births are. So if Superman wants to, he can do that. He can continue the Kryptonian cycle if he wants to. And I really like that. I thought that was a cool idea. Military support. I really like how the military interacts with Superman in this movie. In the old movies, Superman just works on his own all the time. And I don't blame him because literally nothing bad ever happens to Superman. There's one scene in Superman 1 where he gets kryptonite, but that also happens in Batman v Superman in what I think is a much cooler and more impacting way. We may talk about that some other day. But the military support. The military they help out Superman, and there's like this cool part where Superman explains the whole combine the two Phantom Drives things, and the military is listening to him. And there's this cool part after the Smallville fight where Superman is being surrounded by the military, and there's tons of guns pointed at him. And then the general says, this man is not our enemy. And he's like being accepted by the leaders of America. And I really, really like that. I think that's really cool. I really like how it's a cool way to show that Superman has a good relationship with the people of America, with the people of the world. I I really like that. I thought that was really cool. And I also, I was rooting for the military with Superman. When like Ursula was attacking all of the army guys, I actually felt like bad for them because they are the only other line of defense besides Superman. And they could have just not been a Superman at all, but they decided to trust him, and I like that. Now, the biggest controversial part of Man of Steel is when Superman breaks Zod's neck. I understand that he could have written it a different way, so he didn't have to do that. I understand that some people might be bothered by it, but I am not at all, and I think it's a very impactful scene. And I'm going to explain why right here. I think it's a very impactful scene because Superman has to make the ultimate choice. He asks Zod to not try and kill those poor people backed up against the wall with this heat vision. He says, don't do this. Stop it. Stop it. Zod says, no, I'm not. Never. I'm not going to stop. I have nothing left, And Superman has to make the choice to take a life, to save more. Because Superman never directly took a life. They might have incidentally during the fight, but like he never like took somebody and tried to kill them or anything like that. You know what I mean? So, it's like he has to, take a life to save more. And not only does he take a life, but he took the life of the one other Kryptonian. So now he truly is all alone. He is the last of his kind. He has no one to go to that might understand more about his heritage. His father's consciousness is gone. I don't really think he knows about that, but I'm just saying, like, his father's consciousness is gone. And now Zod, who knew about his father, who knew about, the planet, it's all gone. That's it. It's just him. And I really like making this choice. It's very impactful. Because in Superman 2, Superman just kills Zod and he kills his partners. And that's it. He just, throws them down a pit and they die. Which I don't understand why they couldn't just... Oh, right, they got their powers taken away. But yeah, he takes away the powers and then he just throws them down a pit. That's how they die. There's only big final fight and then Superman is forced to make a decision. You know what I mean? It's like... I don't know. Superman could have easily just said, okay. Never mind, I'll do something. But I'm just saying, he had to make a choice. And he clearly was upset that he had to kill his only other Kryptonian brother. And I'm sure he was upset about all the destruction. And I'm sure he was upset about having to take a life. And I think he understood the consequences of being Superman when he had to do that. So I really like that part of the movie. I also want to talk about Henry Cavill in this movie. I am obsessed with Henry Cavill. Him and Mark Hamill are my two favorite actors. Henry Cavill in this movie is amazing. He pulls off that Superman charm without being a complete fucking doofus. Some people say that he's like an asshole or something, but I mean, he's arrogant sometimes, I give him that, but I like arrogant. Spider-Man is arrogant. Deadpool is arrogant. Batman is arrogant, I really like that kind of comedy part where Lois kisses him and then she says, it's all downhill after the first kiss. And he says, I'm pretty sure that only counts when you're kissing a human. And I don't think that the old Superman would say something like that. I'm sure he would be like, shut up. So he's definitely, I don't know, he has a charm without being a fucking nerd. Do you know what I mean? Like, even when he's Clark Kent, he's not that big of a pussy. Like, I know that he's just faking it, but still, I don't like to see that. I also like how, when he's Clark, he's polite. Like, when he's in the interrogation room, he's being kind of charming to them. But he also, has a stature where he's like, I know that you can see me. I think he says, I know that you can see me. I also know that you have a green thing of lifesavers in your pocket. And then he, gets up and he says, I know you want to control me. You won't, but I think we can help each other out. Something like that. He doesn't say like a fucking nerd. He's nice, and it can be sarcastic, but you take him seriously. That's what I like about it. I also like Pa Kent. Now, I know some people are saying, there's a big, huge misconception that Pa Kent was saying to Clark, "You can never be Superman. You can never be Superman." He did not say that. He said, when Clark said, "What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?" when he uses his powers, and he said, "Maybe." Now, people took that and said, Pa Kent thinks that everyone should die and he shouldn't be Superman. He did not say that. He said at the time that he shouldn't do it. But one day the world might be ready for him, and he needs to decide what he's going to do when the world is ready for Superman. That's what he's saying. You know, Clark at his dad's grave when Lois is there, he says, like, in the tornado, Pa Kent tells Clark to not go and save him because the world is not ready yet for Superman. That's what he's trying to say. He's not trying to say never be Superman. He's saying the world is not ready for you yet. But when the time comes, you need to decide if you're going to stand in front of the human race or not. That's what he's saying. And then the time does come when Zod comes. That is the time for Superman. And then Superman thinks to himself, now is the time for me to stand proudly in front of the human race, like my father said. Only do it when it is the time to. And when Zod came, that was the time to. That is what Pa Kent is saying. And I love his sacrifice in that movie. Because he was that confident in his message. That's one day Superman would be ready for the world, but not at the time. That's how much he believed in that, and that is how much he believed that the world needed a Superman eventually. He just had to wait for the right moment. And that's what I love about Pa Kent. The movie has great special effects, by the way. I just want to say this real fast. Obviously, if you watch the old movies, the effects are terrible. They have aged terrible. They're nothing like Star Wars. You see Star Wars, the effects are still great. The fucking effects in those movies are terrible. They're laughable. They're awful. I'm not even going to say anything about them. They're just terrible. But the special effects in this movie are great. The sound is amazing. The soundtrack, all the Superman powers and the punches and the flying. The flying is amazing in this movie. You do feel like he's flying, like for real. Yeah, it's also never boring. This movie is not boring. I never get bored. There are parts where you need to explain what the fuck is happening, but there's also a lot of action and a lot of fighting. Like, the first, 10 minutes is really cool action Krypton stuff, and, you learn about Krypton not at a slow pace. I remember when I watched the original, it was 30 minutes until Superman got to Earth. 30 minutes! There's not that much to talk about on Krypton. Pacing is great in this movie. Yeah. It never is boring. I don't understand when people say it's boring. It's not boring at all. It's not a boring movie. It's a great movie. Now, here's what I'm going to say is my favorite part of this Man of Steel movie. And that is Superman in reality. In the old Superman movies, it is not at all how Superman would be interpreted. Did I say that right? Interpreted? Interpreted? I don't know. I think it's interpreted. Yeah, that's what it is. I'm sorry. But he is interpreted in this movie like it's the real world. People are concerned. People are upset when the city gets destroyed. The city gets destroyed because there's two gods fighting each other. That is realistic. In the old Superman movies, a little bit of city destruction happens, and nobody even gives a shit. They rub it off like it's an everyday thing. It's unrealistic. It's boring, and everything about this movie, it feels very realistic. And even in Batman v Superman, people are debating should Superman be a thing, and obviously Superman has supporters. People were trying to say that everyone hates Superman. That is not true. There are people that hate Superman that protest against him at the Capitol and violate his statutes, but there are people that support him. There are people that, supported him in Mexico when he saved that girl, and there are people that supported him when those floods were happening, and they called out for help from him. People fucking support him. I don't understand why everyone thought that they hated him. I think it is a great way to make Superman realistic, because if you don't make him realistic, then it's fucking boring. Then you have time travel shit and rebuilding things and with fucking blue laser eyes. It's dumb. I don't like it. Yeah, the consequences in this movie are real too. Two gods fight. Lasting consequences. People died in the city. I like that. That's appropriate. People should die in a fight like that. You know? Excuse me. It's realistic. And I like that. The military being, cautious of Superman and everything. That's also very realistic. In the old Superman movies, they just welcome him the day he arrives. There's no, speculation or, questions of true intentions or consequences. It's like, do something. I don't know. But no, I love the realism of this movie. I love the consequences in it. I love the choices that Superman has to make in it. I love the effects that it has on the city. And I love how it plays into the sequel with Batman. I just love so much about the realism of the movie and the consequences that go along with all of it. So that's everything that I love about Man of Steel. I just talked about this for 37 minutes. Yeah, I mean, I just don't understand why some people don't like this movie. I mean, Rotten Tomatoes has a bad score, but I know that 75% like on Rotten Tomatoes. I never pay attention to critic scores because I don't know. I know some of them probably get paid to say a certain thing, right, or something like that. I rely on audience scores because you don't get paid to say shit when you're just an audience member, So yeah, I mean, people like it. Everyone that I've talked to says that they like it. And I know people, if you play the Man of Steel theme, people still know what it is. It's like the bum bum, bum bum, bum bum. It's, people recognize it. Hans Zimmer did such a good job in that movie. It's so good. He's my favorite composer for that movie and The Lion King. And the Dark Knight trilogy. I think what else did Hans Zimmer compose? I know Danny Elfman did the Batman movie, the 1985 one. Hold on, let me look up Hans Zimmer movies. Okay, Hans Zimmer also did Interstellar, Inception, Gladiator. Oh, he just did Dark Phoenix. He did Dunkirk, I remember that. He did Pirates of the Caribbean. He did The Last Samurai. 12 Years a Slave. Blade Runner 2049. I didn't know that he did The Amazing Spider-Man. He did The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I'm so sorry. He did The Simpsons movie. Yeah. He's going to do Wonder Woman 1984 too, I guess. He's a great composer, and he just really makes you feel the effects of... he makes you feel like you just want to root for Superman in these. I love... My favorite track in this whole movie is If You Love These People. Look it up on Spotify, If You Love These People. It's the song that was playing when Zod and Superman are fighting each other, the final battle. It's such a great track. Yeah, I just can't watch the old Superman movies. They bore me to death. There's no consequences. Anything bad that happens, Superman can just reverse it by flying around, and that's it. There's also, he's just a fucking nerd. He's very one-dimensional. I just can't do it. But Man of Steel, Superman goes through the struggle of living in this world and, politics. I like it. I love it, when he calls his mom and he says, Mom, I don't know if I can be Superman anymore. And she says, you don't know this world anything. That kind of stuff interests me. I love how Superman has to make that choice with Zod. I love how Superman meets Lois Lane while she's investigating him instead of just going into the Daily Planet and randomly spotting her. I love how the fights are. I love when Superman rescues all those kids in the bus. I love when Pa Kent makes that big sacrifice. I just love so much about this movie. And it bothers me when people say that it's bad. Because this is honestly my favorite superhero movie ever made. This movie made me like Superman. A lot. Because usually I can't do Superman. So I dig it. Those are my thoughts on Man of Steel. My next episode, I'm not sure what it'll be. I think I'm going to talk about why I hate The Last Jedi. Yep. Probably talk about The Last Jedi. I hate that movie. It's my least favorite movie. Talked about my favorite superhero movie. Now I'm going to talk about my least favorite movie. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Hold My Microphone. And as always, I will see you guys on the next Hold My Microphone. Hold my microphone.